Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we have Taylor Barnett. Taylor, how you doing?
I'm good. It's been a very long week, but I've survived. I made it.
Yeah, do you want to give us just the highlights of everything you have done this week?
Hopefully, I don't forget any. So Monday we released a new Next.js starter app that can be deployed to Netlify by the one click and a few extra database setup steps. Tuesday we announced that Planetscale is out of beta. We're now GA, and that we also raised a Series C round. Wednesday, we announced data imports, which I feel is probably one of our most like technically awesome features, but is probably going to be slightly overshadowed a tad. But the reason why it's awesome is you can actually like import your data from any MySQL database, like cloud database. And not only does it just like make sure that it's like kept up, like, so say new writes happen to the old database until you like turn and disconnect it and fully switch over to Planetscale. Planetscale brings all of those new writes in. You can even read the data. You can like test it out and play around with it because, you know, like changing database, that's like a scary thing. Like that sounds like downtime and all these things, but like it's done in a way that it would be no downtime, no data loss, nothing. And so that's really cool. And then Thursday, you can now create a Planetscale database inside the new Prisma data platform. It's one of two different database options in there. And then you can instantly like query it and explore the data and different stuff at cloud.prisma.io. And then today, here, but also we announced Archetype. It's a MySQL GUI, like a Mac app. It looks beautiful. It's like if you've ever used a MySQL like GUI, sometimes you feel like you're like in 1995 occasionally. This does not look that way. It looks totally different. And it also supports branching. So you can actually like use your Planetscale branches in there, which has historically been hard because you have to like create a different connection for every branch most of the time. If you're using any other kind of like local SQL GUI, and so this is like the first one that supports that. And it has a awesome design, which we're big fans of too. So yeah,
So
that's yeah, no big deal. Yeah.
and while you were launching all of that, you were also showing up at events because you were at Prisma Serverless yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, you just hired two new teammates.
Yeah. And I was on vacation last week, partially too.
Oh yeah,
just like bad trip planning timing of things, but yeah.
So I imagine you got a nap planned for.
Yeah, definitely
Good.
a nap.
Good.
And I'm really excited for a long Thanksgiving weekend next week too.
Me too. We a coworker of mine, a friend and coworker Lauren just sent me a pecan pie from Texas.
Yeah.
And I am planning to eat the whole thing. That's my Thanksgiving dinner, actually.
Tuesday, I'm going to make a chocolate caramel pecan pie. It's super easy to make. It's basically tastes like a candy bar. But that is my contribution to Thanksgiving. It like takes less than an hour. So any pie that takes less than an hour, sign me up. Partially because you don't have to do any dough because the crust is pecans, very finely chopped up. And then it's just like melted caramel with like some cream and then a chocolate layer on the top. It's basically a candy bar, but
I would like that recipe, please. I'm going to eat that
I need
candy
to find
bar.
it. I actually need to find it. I need to text my mom to remind me where I store that recipe. But yeah.
Like I know that I know you probably mean something different than what I just pictured, but I picture her on the phone with you being like, okay, you remember that one cupboard in your kitchen? Like, go there, open it up. It's in the back in a box full of recipe cards.
It's probably more like her, like looking up in her proper recipe book and then taking a picture and sending it over, which I have to do every 12 months because, I don't like store recipes. Like, probably I should, but
I get it. I feel like every dev who cooks has this back of the head ambition, like I'm gonna build that recipe app. I'm finally gonna do it, and then I'm gonna keep my recipes in it. I'm like, man, I can't even be bothered to put my recipe photos into a folder. Like, there's zero chance I'm going to keep an app updated.
Ironically, that is actually one of the projects I think I did in college. Like I was in a software engineering course, I think my senior year, and we had to create an API. And so my team came up with like a food API or something.
I love it.
And yeah, that's what we did. It definitely I think I still have the repo from it. That's like 6 years ago, but yeah, maybe I should pull that back out. It was written in Python.
It's time.
Using Flask.
We need that pecan pie recipe. Okay, so for folks who are not familiar with your work, baking and otherwise, can you?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing developer relations about 6-7 years now. I was doing a little bit of full stack development before that at like a startup. I studied computer science at the University of Texas, and I was doing a lot of, this was like the first phase of like university hackathons. You know, Cassidy probably, we were around the same time of growing up in these like hackathons. And, you know, I think I realized like I didn't want to write code all day, every day. I still love writing code, but I saw it as a tool to something bigger. I saw it as a tool to like connect with people, to like relate, to help people, rather than just like write web apps for, you know, one of the startups I worked at was like commercial real estate startup, like stuff like that. I was just like, this is just not my cup of tea. And so I joined a startup called Keen.io. It's a data analytics API company that was really big a few years ago. I left when I got acqui-hired. But I did DevRel there with someone named Tim Falls, who was like the first DevRel person at SendGrid. So really, you know, right when DevRel was really starting to take off, and I had a great team there at Keen that I really got to learn how awesome like that kind of work can be, and all the different possibilities that you could do with it. And I was sold. I was like, I'm not going back to software engineering. I did have one point where I remember I did take a couple software engineering interviews because I was like debating going back. But yeah, so I stuck with it. So data analytics API. Then I went to an API tooling company to help developers actually build their APIs, like doing the design and the documentation, the testing of it. Then I went to a more general like API, not management as much as like integration platform, where I was doing more. And it was kind of start of me going into the serverless world, because in a way you could write actual code on the platform and it was delivered in kind of a serverless kind of way, with a few layers on top of it to help people integrate different APIs together in their data. And then now I am at Planetscale since the end of July. So my world has been APIs and data, but maybe not necessarily databases. So back when I was doing software engineering, that was like the part that I like did not want to touch the most, because it was scary, you know?
You just touched on something that I feel like is especially for folks who are front end specialized, is that when you start bringing up databases, they can feel very intimidating, because like one of the things that you hear as like the core problem, like every time there's a security problem, the database got breached, or like data loss, somebody accidentally deleted the entire database, or something, you know, it always feels like when there's a big problem that really gets a company into a lot of trouble, it's the database, like something happened to the database. And it might be something around the database let somebody get to the database, but that doesn't make me any less nervous about actually getting into data. So what caused you to make that jump? What caused you to dive in with databases?
Yeah, I mean, this was around when Planetscale had just come out of beta back in May when I started looking at it. I had some friends that had been working there, and it just was so easy to get started. Like creating the database took just seconds. if you've ever opened up like an AWS console, or even on some of the better experiences, like you have to make decisions about sizing of stuff and like all these different decisions. And you're like, well, what happens if I want to change my mind? Like, will I be able to like scale? Like, is this going to like if I don't make the right decision right now, is that going to cause like technical debt down the road in a year? That's going to cause like a month of my life again? Like, I have no idea. And so I was always historically just like scared to touch just databases in general. I wasn't scared of data. I mean, I was like working at a data analytics API company that had a really nice API, and it was focused on event data. So it was very flexible kind of schemas and stuff, kind of riding that wave of when people are starting to get into NoSQL and stuff. That just felt more welcoming, and it felt more like I can make changes. I mean, you should spend time on the data model, but like I could make changes and stuff like that. And so, this idea that databases have been ignored for so long, like the developer experience of them, we push them off to DBAs or other database experts. And it's like some kind of black magic that only they know, that no one else knows, that like we as software developers and engineers, like just kind of were like having to constantly consult them, or being scared when we had to do a migration, or, oh no, we need to add a column to a table. That could be scary. Like, what's going to happen? Is that going to cause downtime? Like we've all seen those status pages where some service was like unavailable because between the hours of 9 p.m. and 12, because they had to do some kind of database update. Like, it doesn't have, it started making me think that it doesn't have to be that way. And the team is so smart. It's like basically the largest collection of like modern tooling around MySQL you could find at any company as at Planetscale. And I was like, well, if they can't figure it out, then we're really screwed. And so, just that strong developer experience focus was something that really spoke to me. It's been something I've cared about for years, whether that been just like small projects I was doing on my own that I couldn't always like filter into the product itself, like documentation or tutorials and things like that, getting started experiences. And I felt like I could actually like have a lot of impact and make developers' lives better in this thing that is not great for many of them right now.
Definitely feels to me like there is a bit of a renaissance in the database space. I feel like there have always been database players, and as we've seen the Jamstack approach to websites take off, where front ends are decoupled and everything is kind of built of multiple composable APIs, databases are like, okay, well, how can we be part of that? And we started seeing things pop up. So we've seen tools, like Mongo made a whole bunch of effort to make themselves more like we can be serverless friendly. And, FaunaDB came up, and CockroachDB, and they're all doing a lot of work to be like this kind of accessible thing. And so Planetscale is I would say part of that wave. And I have found Planetscale to be fascinating because y'all are doing some stuff that I'm not seeing in other areas of the space. One of the things that I find most interesting is that you've introduced the concept of branching to databases. And I don't know if you're the only ones who do it. You're the only ones I've heard of. And so can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because I feel like this is your killer feature.
Yeah. So branching, many of us are familiar with branching because of Git, and GitHub, like that really brought in that, what is the Git flow, and like, how do we work and have our code in these kind of separate environments in some ways. The thing was, it just never came over fully to the full stack. It never came over to the back end. Our front end can be branched, but why not the data and the database? There's some people have done it, internally. Some tooling exists out there, but not like an actual like commercial like someone that's like a legit product, like building it. And part of it's because every branch is a database. When you think about it, it's like isolated. It's a fully isolated environment.
Right.
And then because of that, like you have to handle like, how do we merge? How do we handle all of these more difficult things? And so one part of that is possible because Planetscale is built on top of this open source project called Vitess that was started at YouTube many years ago. It's a CNCF open source project. It's the first graduated, I think, database project out of CNCF. Like it's legit. Like Slack stores all of their data in Vitess.
Dang, I didn't know
for
that.
example, when we're talking about scale, like GitHub's using Vitess. YouTube moved on because they changed some things, but like, it was created to help YouTube scale, and like YouTube had some ridiculous scale. Like it's hard to, now we just like assume it's like this big thing, but it went from like 0 to 100 really, really quickly back like 10 more years ago now.
I definitely remember a time before YouTube.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine a world without YouTube now, but I do remember like the moment when it started being one of the competing services that you would watch videos on. But it could have been YouTube, or maybe it was going to be eBaum's world. Who knew?
Like, and all that was MySQL. Like, I mean, some of the biggest sites on the planet are all the data is on MySQL. And so back to the branching thing. So like Vitess is the underlying thing that makes a lot of Planetscale possible. The branching piece, so having to have, your own isolated environment, not just for production and dev, but maybe you're branching off for separate PRs and all different things. Like being able to do that and actually test out the schema alongside your code, and having a test database, and then be able to merge that back in. And the other cool thing about the merging thing is like, especially for larger databases, that could be a pretty tricky thing to do, like merging, changing schema while the app is still running and not having any downtime. And so that's where we talk about like the non-blocking schema change. So we're not blocking the app from, connections and like doing queries and all that stuff. We do it in a very safe way where it can still be running and all that going on while that merge is happening. So you can see sometimes those merge requests like take different amount of times. For a really large database, for something that has very little data, it's a few seconds most of the time, which is pretty awesome. Yeah,
that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So this is like branching, I think, is one of the really, really cool features. One of the other things that's cool about Planetscale is that it calls itself a serverless database, and I think that there are a couple entries in this space, but I feel like Planetscale is doing something pretty interesting here. So I guess the first question would be, like, if I use an API, if I go hit my headless CMS, it kind of doesn't matter if I hit it in a server or a serverless function or from the browser. So why does one need a serverless database versus a regular database?
Yeah. I will first say, like, the term serverless 5 years ago, I always kind of like giggled at it a little bit, coming from a back end more focused engineering background. It's just, there's so many servers. It's just that you're not managing the infrastructure that they're running on. So there's that piece to it. The other piece is, in a serverless runtime environments with like serverless functions becoming more and more popular, many different offerings now of them. Every function is going to create like in a traditional database, is going to create a connection to the database. You're very quickly going to max out connections. Right. Some of these other databases that have traditionally been used, we're talking a few hundred can max out. And like, what if you had thousands of functions running at once? You're going to start dropping connections. Requests are going to fail. Like, you're going to run into these issues.
This is like when, back in the day when everybody was running PHP. Right. Everybody had it was the LAMP stack. You had a MySQL database and a PHP server, and then you build a website on top of that. And every time someone came to your website, it would have to hit the server, and the server would have to open a MySQL connection, and then it would have to get some data, make that data into like a template assembly call, and then return some markup. And so you would see like you would max out your connection pool, and you would get weird errors if a website was really busy. Like somebody popular would talk about a website. Oprah would mention it on her show, and then people would try to go to it, and they would get like a database error, or they would get a server error, right? And it was because these tools are built for a finite number of connections. So what you're talking about here is basically by going serverless, we're exacerbating that problem because each serverless function, like they don't share that connection.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And Vitesse is what is actually able to handle all these kinds of high number of connections underneath the hood. So again, like it's what really makes Planetscale special. But one of the things is historically, I think where things were kind of going is like, oh, maybe we can't use MySQL databases in this like traditional way anymore because of these connection issues. Planetscale takes a different look. We're like, no, you still can use a MySQL compatible database. You just need a little different infrastructure on what it's running on top of. And so that's why we've leaned really hard into MySQL, because that is what is scale so well with Vitesse. Like Vitesse wouldn't easily support other. And Vitesse is, I mean, when you think about the work that was initially done through YouTube and has been done by many other companies now, we are standing on the shoulders of lots of open source work that's been done. We have a team at Planetscale that also help maintain Vitesse too. It's kind of a separate team in some ways. Like they're working open source basically, which is pretty awesome that we can have that. But they're also the experts that help teach the rest of us in Planetscale how to like build products on top of Vitesse and like actually utilize some of the features that it has. For example, that data imports feature that I mentioned that released on Wednesday, that would have not been possible without some of the features of Vitesse that handle like replication of like tablets and stuff of very complex database things. But and so the connections piece. So a serverless database needs to be able to handle a high number of connections, high availability, needs to be able to scale without, you having to go into a console and tell it to scale. It like just needs to do it.
Right.
If anybody, remembers like when we were first building on like Heroku, having to like spin up dynos and then the dynos like spin down kind of thing. Like you can't have that. It just, your database needs to be available like right now.
Right.
And so a serverless database, there's just different pieces about it that is a little bit different. It's not necessarily a revolutionary idea. Like serverless ideas have been around for a while, but it's piecing together technologies that have taken a few years to kind of come together.
Nice. Well, that's very cool. So, I mean, this is, I have so many questions, but I think it might be easier at this point now that we've got a kind of a groundwork laid to actually start seeing this in action. So, let me switch us over to the desktop view here. And we will first and foremost, for anybody who would like to watch this show with captions, they are available on the homepage of learnwithjason.dev. We've got white coat captioning here today, writing down everything for us. Thank you very much for that. And that is made possible through the support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, all kicking in to make the show more accessible to more people. So thank you very much for that. We've also got Taylor on the show. So make sure you head over to Twitter and follow Taylor. We're going to be working with Planetscale today, so this is the website if you want to go and check there. We're going to do more with that, and then I think we're going to work with some more tools, but we'll introduce those as they come up. So how about we do this? If I want to get started, I want to try out Planetscale. What is step one for me?
Yeah, sign up, get started. You might have an account already. I don't know if you
have an account, so I'm going to sign in. I used GitHub to do it.
Yeah, makes it easier. And
Okay.
also for people when they sign in the first time, we have a new like onboarding flow that actually explains the idea of branching and deploy requests and all that stuff. So for someone who would be new, they would see that. It's awesome to go through that because these ideas are ideas we know, but like piecing it together with databases, sometimes like you're having to like make mental
Mm-hmm.
connections. But yeah, so okay, so we've got your Planetscale account. Let's also make sure that we have the Planetscale CLI. It's called Pscale. If you go to Planetscale /CLI, we have a whole page. Download the latest. I think we'll give you the snippet that you need to brew install it.
All right, so let's get that going in the background and just keep fingers crossed that I switched computers and that's why I don't have the CLI. And so we're
Yeah,
just gonna find out whether or not this computer's gonna mutiny on me.
yeah.
Did it
It's
work?
I think
No. Oh
it ended a little
no.
early. Yeah.
Oh dear. Your
Oh, we did.
CLI, your CLT does not. Oh geez, what have I done? What
Uh,
is what? What? What is this?
that's a new one for me. Is that something from Homebrew?
What are you? Are you don't? Oh no.
When's the
What
last
has
time you
happened?
Homebrew installed something on
I have
here?
no idea. Computer, it is a mutiny.
I mean, so one thing I will say, we can still try to fix this about, but everything that you can do in the CLI, you can do in the UI. So that's one of the things that's like big for us is that you should be able to be all CLI, all UI, or like some combination of both. The CLI though is helpful for those local connections. So you
It's
don't have to
we're
deal with
gonna
those
need it for the
connections.
local connections, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that with a that's gonna be a
Yeah,
restart.
it would be a little bit harder. We could put the actual connection string with the password and everything in there. But then you just you can still
What's
do it technically. But
okay,
yeah.
let's just try this and see what happens. Okay. You hackers, you dirty hackers. Okay, did I type my password right? I did. Oh boy. Here we go. Is this the one that's like a billion oh 27 hours, 28 hours? This is going to go great. Okay. Oh no, it's speeding up 5 minutes. All
Oh,
right. Huh?
wow.
Huh? Look, everyone. I should have done this beforehand. Lesson
Yeah,
learned. I
I yeah.
Here I was thinking to myself, this is going to go great. It's not going to be a problem at all. And as usual, I was wrong. So, while we are waiting for this to happen, which looks like it is going a lot faster than I thought it would. So, yeah, 20. I will say my favorite feature of Mac's installation tools is its completely nonsensical concepts of time.
Hey, I mean, it's just setting expectations so that, you don't get disappointed as much.
I know it makes me laugh so much that usually when you start installing anything, it's like this is gonna take more than a day. Like maybe just walk
Yeah.
away. Just
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, time to get a coffee. But so okay, so let's look at a few things that we're gonna need to do. I have one question, which is, I think if I remember correctly, the free plan only covers one database. Is that right?
Yeah, that is a thing. Um
So let's see.
I
I
can I
mean,
can I can bump you up a little bit right now if you want to not delete your one from
we
Prisma.
we might if you
Okay,
don't mind.
I have the power. Now now everyone's going to DM me for free databases. Um yeah, I need to log in. 1 second, I'll get it.
All right. Here we go. We're doing the. Ola, did you put a dolphin and a wolf into the chat? What is a dolphin wolf? I want to know what now I'm very curious. What is a dolphin wolf? Shark
Shark
wolf.
wolf.
Okay, how's this going? 12 minutes. You said 4 minutes. It was 10 minutes 5 minutes ago. All right. So this is going to be potentially problematic, but we can get pretty far on setting things up and like set up some of our front end while we get the tools installed to run things locally. Yeah, Matthias. About random remaining. Yeah, I think it might be that. But this at least seems like it is going faster than what it says. So I'm happy about that at least. I need you should be able to create more databases now. Okay, let's see. Hey, it's not yelling at me. Hooray. Okay, so I have a question because I think I did this wrong yesterday at Prisma Serverless. When I'm choosing a region, if I'm using serverless functions, I should not choose the region close to me. I should choose the region close to my serverless functions.
Yes. So 2 things. One, branches can be in different regions, which is kind of cool. So for like developers on a distributed team, maybe because they're going to be using something locally, they would want something close to them because they're local. But where your production database lives, you would want it wherever the closest region to where your serverless function is going to run. Got it. So those two are, latency is a little bit less with those two. Got it. But yeah, we do have devs who like will make a branch closest to whatever region is to them because they're the idea. So you have to think, is this going to be running locally the most, or is this going to be running, somewhere production the most? Yeah. Yeah. And so in what's interesting about this is like, if you're using serverless functions through just about any abstraction service, a lot of them are going to be based in Amazon's US East. Yep. So I'm going to choose US East because I think that's going to make this ridiculously fast. So I'm going to create here. And what got me clued into this was Chris Biscardi is doing Rust Adventures. Yep. And wait, where's Rust Adventures? Yeah, I'm not sure the exact URL. I did it wrong. Let's see if I can find it. Rust Adventure, not plural. But I just saw that Chris was putting up some like execution times, and it was like under 20 milliseconds to execute a Rust function that also hit the database, and like it's so fast that it seems broken. Yeah. And we're definitely always like releasing more regions. We did regions first with I think like 3, and I think we're now, I actually don't know, 6, 7, something like that. That's wild. The engineering team's gotten pretty good at deploying them in different places. Sometimes there's regulatory things that we have to go through for certain regions over others. Stuff like that. But we're always, if anybody has requests, support is always down to hear and make note of those. So when we're trying to decide where we go next, we can do that. Great. Okay, so we're chugging along here. It looks like at the rate that this is ticking down, we are actually about 2 minutes away. So fingers crossed. Although I guess this is the countdown bar that runs before it opens the next countdown bar. It's like, well, I'm only installing now. Next, I have to actually run the installed software. So we'll see how all that goes. But okay, so I've created a database, though. I created a database. Yeah. We're calling this one LWJ. And thank you, Tony. And on this, I can see that I currently have one branch. And there's a bunch of information here, like number of tables, number of branches, number of connections. Yeah. Do you want to give us a bit of a tour of kind of what we're looking at here? Yeah. So this is your database. And like, as soon as you created this, like within seconds, if you had tried, it could have made like a connection, which is amazing if you've ever tested creating a database and some other stuff. And so, your main branch. So we give it the name main. The idea is eventually that is like your production branch that later so right now it hasn't been promoted to production. Production branches have a few different things about them. Like you can't just like drop a table on a production branch. We won't allow it. You'll get like a warning or just like an error that tells you, hey, you can't do that, which is pretty nice. Things like that. And so then, most people, when they're first getting started out, they might, because they know that main's eventually going to be their production and it's empty. They want to create a new branch in the UI or in the CLI to start doing some work.
Yeah.
And then you also have the connect. Let's see if Pscale will run the home.
Should work. Oh, is it version?
I think
there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
So we've got the latest Pscale CLI.
Yeah.
And I am now ready to, well, I'm not quite ready because I have to log in, right?
Yeah. If you do Pscale off login, I think I'm horrible about remembering. Cool. Yeah. And so then it just wants to make sure that matches what's in there. Just, and if those two match, you can confirm it. So that we know. And this works because you're already logged in the browser. So we know we don't have to have you do a separate login.
That's handy. That
yeah.
It's nice to not have to do a bunch of manual stuff.
Typing your password in a CLI is always weird, I think.
Yeah.
So we're logged in with Pscale. And so now everything that you do for the most part, I guess, minus doing the fancy connect proxy thing that we'll talk about later, can also be done in the UI or in the CLI.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a database. Our database currently has no tables, no data,
tables, nothing.
So if we want to get to that point, like we, let's say for this one, let's track, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe some favorite songs.
Okay.
Do like a song title and a Spotify link or something.
Yeah. I think my favorite way to model data in Planetscale is actually using Prisma.
Okay.
That's like my top favorite way, partially because I love writing Prisma schema. ORMs have their pros and their cons, but Prisma is a pretty special ORM. I hadn't used Prisma until like 2-3 months ago, and now I'm like sort of obsessed, probably. I've used other ORMs and them just being so tightly. I think you might have had Nicholas from Prisma on in the past, but he probably gave like the whole history of Prisma and how they avoided the ORM term, but now they've like gone full steam ahead with that. But yeah, we can create a data model in our Prisma schema.
Great. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just setting up a repo here. So cool. We've got a repo that's all up and running. And so now if anybody wants to go look, you can follow along with this repo. But what I can do in the meantime is I'll open this thing up and let's see if I need to change any of the settings here, because like I said, this is a new, where's my, it was off screen. That's why it was weird. Okay. So here is our empty project and I'm ready to write some, am I ready to write some Prisma schema or should I like initialize this a bit?
I mean, we could do, a lot of times I do, what is it? NPX Prisma init or whatever to give me like the initial, I think that's the correct one.
I should probably set up the package first, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
I think in my head, I'm imagining the development environment you used during Prisma serverless conference. And so I'm making some bad assumptions.
Okay, so we have, just looking at this file here, we just initialized an empty project. So this is, it's a default npm init that has whatever we need in it. So now we can...
and you're going to need the Prisma CLI too.
npm install Prisma. Let's do that. And now I can do npx Prisma init. and that happened real fast.
Cool.
So here is our Prisma, and then we've got a schema. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So
is there a Prisma thingy? I'm going to install this actually.
Yeah, that's what gives you, well, later, when you're actually trying to query your database or add data, that's what you get the TypeScript, all the hints and all that stuff nicely. Yeah.
Well, and this syntax highlighting is nice too, because just like plain text is so hard to parse sometimes when you're trying to scan a file.
Actually, so I gave a talk for Next.js Conf the other week. I misspelled something in my Prisma schema. It still worked with it misspelled, but only because that thing it just didn't work. The referential integrity thing that I'll explain in just a second. I misspelled referential. Somebody messaged me to let me know. They actually thought it was a bug in Prisma, and I was like, nope, that was just me like typing live incorrectly. But yeah, so it'll give you a little bit of help in your schema.prisma file too, which is helpful.
Nice.
So a couple of things. So one, we need to change the provider to MySQL, since we're going to be using a MySQL database. Let me pull up.
So MySQL.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then URL is good, and that's what it should be. Then we need to add the shadow database URL.
And this is going to autocomplete, right? Now that we've installed. Yes. Oh, I love it.
I think, yeah, it should. And then we just want to update, that.
Okay.
I was just looking at my Prisma code, so I make sure I don't forget anything. One sec, sorry. And then up in there's one more. What am I forgetting? 1 second. I think we need to turn on the referential.
It's like preview features, right?
Yeah. So in the client is preview features. Yeah. Referential integrity.
And then we have to actually turn it on.
Yeah. Then we have to do referential integrity equals Prisma. Got
it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there we go. And then to talk through this a little bit, the shadow database, what is this one doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So Prisma migration tool kind of like tracks how there's been drifts in your schema.
Mm-hmm.
And it does that with this idea of a shadow database.
Okay.
I think, it's like this, it's a temporary database that you don't actually need on production. I know sometimes people ask like, oh, do I need that environment variable in production? You can literally like not add it when you're deploying to Netlify or whatever for production, because we only look to the database URL. The only time the shadow database URL is used is when you run Prisma Migrate, and it helps it track those like diffs in changes in your Prisma schema. I recommend just going to read also the Prisma shadow database page.
I can see Anthony's posting quotes in the chat right now.
It goes a lot deeper about how it works. But the most important thing is like you need it to do Prisma Migrate. If you're never going to do a Prisma Migrate, then you don't actually need it. But
generally speaking, like if we think about it, not necessarily exactly what it's doing, but what it's for. Prisma gives you the ability to like make a change to your schema, and then you run Prisma Migrate. And when you do that, it's going to update the client, and it's going to go update the database upstream and do a whole bunch of like housekeeping and accounting work to make sure that things work.
Yeah.
And from the way they describe it, it kind of sounds like the shadow database URL is a way to keep partial work so that you can do a thing, compare it to the other thing, make sure that it's not different. And then like when they're all done, they're like, okay, clean up, empty the database. Yeah. And you would never do that work in production. Like nobody's going to be on your website clicking a button that's like, hey, change the production database. Yeah. So then, okay, so that's what the shadow database URL is. And then referential integrity.
Yeah.
This is interesting because I don't quite know what this means. Yeah. And I also find it very amusing that we have to set a Prisma setting to Prisma. That just makes me smile.
I think it used to actually be called, it was slightly different a few versions ago in Prisma. And now I already forgot what it was called. It might even, did it have Planetscale in the name? I don't know, because we were working with the Prisma team partially to like make this workflow work. Because initially there was some blockers to using Prisma with Planetscale, and we've like worked through a lot of them and are continuing to work through to make even like, can we make the shadow database experience better? You know, things like that. So referential integrity, it's a big word. I always misspell referential a lot. Has to do with this idea of having consistency of data between relations in your database. Planetscale doesn't support foreign key constraints. It's a trade-off for us being able to have things like the branching and the schema changes and all these like my non-blocking schema changes and like all these migration, nice developer experience features. So what Prisma actually does is when that's turned on, they like, it knows not to try to make any foreign keys, and it passes that job or that work off to the Prisma client, and then the Prisma client can handle that. So you could actually technically have foreign key like relationships in your schema, which if you just used as raw schema on Planetscale wouldn't work. You'd get some Planetscale would give you some error messages, but in a Prisma schema file you can, and the client then will handle it. So got it. It's just telling the Prisma client like, hey, don't try to do these foreign keys in the migration, and the client will handle it. Now, I've been actually wanting to dig into like the very deeper technical thing of like how the client actually handles it more, but that's something I think soon to learn.
Yeah, and speaking for myself and speaking for who I know a lot of the folks watching, how much we do with databases.
Yeah.
For most of us, this isn't a feature that we're going to miss because it's not something that we're using now. Yeah. I think that there are certainly like somebody who's heavy into databases and has done a lot of MySQL might come in and go, wait, I can't use this thing that I use all the time.
Yeah, and that is a common thing I've heard. I think sometimes we actually are doing for like some of those relationships, and don't always realize it in our Prisma schema, because you know it is a layer on top of the actual SQL, so it's kind of hidden away that what is actually going on. But what was really cool was like I took a Prisma schema from an example of something else, and it had those in there, and I was all worried that I was going to have to remove them and change the data model. But then I just ran Prisma Migrate with the referential integrity stuff turned on, and it just like worked. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I can just move on. Yeah. You know, and we also have some really good docs about how to operate without foreign keys. So if somebody's really like concerned about that, we explain why we made the decision and kind of how to do data modeling without it too.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's we'll leave any deeper exploration on that, since it's something that for me as a front-end developer, I will care about it when I need to care about it. This is generally how I approach a lot of development these days. Is like I'm here to solve a problem. If I hit something that requires me to do further research, I will. But for now, I'm going to trust the tools to know what they're doing. So we've got this configured. Good. Is there anything additional we have to configure in here to get Prisma working?
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, if we wanted, besides just starting to put in the model itself.
Okay. Nope. So let's build in a model, and then the keyword for that is the keyword model. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have a model.
The model, and then the name, and then curly braces.
And so we want this to be songs.
Or just is it singular song?
Oh, we can make a singular song.
So it's not confusing.
And then it'll need some kind of an ID. So I'm just going to map out fields here. So it'll have some kind of an ID. It'll have a title, and let's give it a URL. Anything else you want to track on these?
That sounds good for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then we need to do more, I assume, because it's mad at me.
Yeah. You need to know what the actual types are.
Okay.
So ID, that could be a string, So you can, and I think actually I didn't realize this, when you save it and it will automatically format everything.
I
like
noticed
the
that. Did you
Prisma
see it
thing
lining
does.
these things up?
Yeah, I did not know that and looked like a dork probably fixing my spacing while I was recording for Next.js conference. But
Look, if you're
yeah,
not, if you're live coding and you don't look like a dork, are you even live coding?
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, and here, let me like make my lines all pretty, Yeah. So, the ID could be a string.
Okay, and is that capitalized or lowercase?
Capitalized, yeah.
Okay.
And then do space, and then the at ID, so that
ID,
it knows
okay.
like that's, and then you space again, and what we wanted to automatically create these IDs for us. In default is a great way of doing that. And then inside of there, put CUID. Yep, right there. So then it's like we're not going to have collision of IDs. It's not just like auto incrementing it. So someone could just like go 1, 2. It's a little bit of an API security issue sometimes to just have things being in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I just realized something.
Yeah.
Because this is all like Prisma's generated stuff, I can hit control space here and I'm getting a list of things that are supported. Yep. Which is really cool.
And it knows that based on MySQL too, because different providers are going to have different types.
Oh, that's cool.
If you're doing like a SQLite or something, like it's going to have different types than a MySQL kind of thing. Yeah.
And like, look, you can do this too. Like, oh, okay, I'll make it unique.
Yeah.
Like, I love this. It's so nice to be able to do stuff like that. Okay, so this is our database. And I just saved, and it did the auto formatty liney uppy thing. Yep, that's the technical term for it, I believe.
Cool. Yeah, It was. And the funny thing was, like every time I would try to like space it out ahead of time. But then the next word I would type, like title, was like longer, and I was like, dang it, I gotta have one more tab.
Okay.
Spacing.
So this is a pretty simple database, but it'd grow over time. Like maybe we want upvote features, maybe we want user accounts. That'll all come later. For now, we want our proof of concept. Can I store a list of my favorite songs?
Totally.
So,
yes.
Am I done? Like what happens next?
Yeah. So our goal is that we want to get the schema up on Planetscale, but then we also want to like deploy it. I mean, I guess we could. I don't usually do it where I don't have like the actual application code usually first, but I mean, a Prisma migrate would work in the situation, given we do a couple of more steps that I will share. But we could go ahead and do the Prisma migrate just so that we can see our schema up on Planetscale and everything. So in order for Prisma migrate to work, we need our environment variables, those 2 environment variables. And Prisma does the nice thing of going ahead and even creating the environment file for us.
Hold on. I think I have a plugin here that like it's called, what is it called? Cloak. I need to turn this off because we're not going to need it today. Okay, so then when I open up the .n file.
Oh, is that why it was hiding the? Or no?
You are supposed to be off. Get out of here. Nope. Cloak. Can't spell. I guess we're going to uninstall it then.
Does it usually work pretty good? I'm just curious because I was looking for something recently.
My issue that I've run into with Cloak. Why?
It's hard to turn on and off. It's sometimes that's also just the weird.
Is this gonna? No, that's not it.
The VS Code extensions are weird sometimes. When you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's fighting me, but this is saved. Let me just quit code and open it again and see if that fixes it. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see this is why we can't have nice things. So the way that works is it basically just finds whatever the environment variable value is and it just hides it. So I will get these set up, and then we'll put these in here. And then if I type, it just masks all that. It's a really cool thing, but the problem with it is sometimes every once in a while it flashes, and when it's on video, even one frame is too many. So I've just largely not used it. What? Go away. Not now. Oh, I think that's what's going on, is this needs to update, and it's probably keeping old settings until it updates. So I'll deal with that at a later date. Today's not the day. So.
Yeah. So, for everyone to understand, we are going to run a proxy to our Planetscale database locally. And so we want to tell Prisma where is the database. And so it is going to actually be like it's local, but it's going to proxy out to like a database actually on the cloud.
Right.
And so in that database URL, we're going to need...
I'm going to type it down here and then copy paste it so people can see it.
Yeah. So it'll be MySQL :
Are you serious? Okay, we're going to do it here.
There we go.
Get out.
Did it just disappear again? Yeah.
Oh my God, you're the worst. Okay, I'm doing it in a different... I'm going to do it in a different... Here we go. MySQL : /
root at 127.
Oh, 127.
Oh, you could also do localhost too. That's just the way I do it. Colon, and then we need to tell it what port. Okay. Let's do 3309.
And is this like, can I just choose any available port?
Yeah, kind of like the Prisma one. We just kind of like started doing that. And then we don't want to make someone decide like what port necessarily. Like I would probably be paralyzed by decision at that point.
I struggle with that myself.
And then just the database name.
Okay. And then this is going to be the database URL. What about the shadow database? Is it the same?
Same thing with just a different port. So I do 3310 most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take the first one here, and I'm going to go back in and put it in my database URL. And then we'll take the second one, and that's going to be our shadow database URL. Okay. Now these don't work yet. Let me make sure I didn't add any.
Yeah.
Good. That's all gone. All right. So these are set.
Yeah.
But these are not yet running.
Correct.
Okay.
So go over to our terminal then, and let's get connected to them. So that will be pscale connect.
Do I need to create the branches first, or can I just like connect and
we didn't wait. We didn't create the shadow branch, but the main branch will be. We can just use our main as like our because it's. We're going to eventually get it as the production. We could also do a third one and have a dev. I mean, it really does. So most of the time when I'm doing like that first one, I just let main, and then I promote main to be the production branch later.
Got it. Okay.
Because there's nothing on there. So I'm like, it doesn't hurt. Now, if it was in a situation where you had an existing main branch that you didn't want to touch, you would want to create some kind of dev branch and still have the shadow branch.
Okay. I gotcha. So we can use main since it's empty as our first database. And then we need to create a shadow branch.
Yeah. So pscale branch, is it then the database? Nope. Hold on 1 second. I always forget the ordering. Actually, you can just do -- help, I think, and you should be able.
Let's take a look. Pscale branch.
Branch create, and then you'll have. Wait, let me make sure. Create a branch from a database. It's gonna have to have the database name in there, and I think it's.
Source database,
then branch name. Okay, yeah. So pscale branch create LJW shadow.
Okay, so now we've got that. So we've got our main database, which will be our database URL. We've got a shadow database, which will be our shadow URL.
Yep.
And now we just need to connect to both of those.
Correct. Yeah. So that's pscale connect.
And I'm also going to need, so I need to use like separate terminals for this, right?
Yeah. So end up having 3 tabs usually at that point.
And And is this the right command? It's like pscale connect, the database
dash
name, the
dash
branch
port,
name.
And then say
and
the,
we said 3309.
Correct. So that should connect.
Okay. And that connects, and there's that
Correct.
127 at 3309. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Pscale connect, LWJ shadow, port 3310. No, you did it wrong.
I do that all the time. I have to kill. Yeah, and then I run Prisma Migrate, and it's like, you don't have a shadow database. And like, yeah, I do. How dare you tell me? Like, I created it.
Hey, thanks for the raid, RP Live. Welcome everybody. We're playing with databases today. We're using Planetscale, using Prisma, and we're eventually going to get into some Next.js. So, all right, I have now I've got 2 database branches. We're connected locally. It's set up in the environment. We've got a schema Prisma. I can migrate.
Yeah, I think but for 1 second, let me just say like what is going on with those connects. We're basically proxying into our Planetscale database using the auth that you've logged in through the CLI. So then you don't have to handle like creating a password for doing these. Like, really only want to do the password stuff if I'm actually in production. Mm-hmm. So then I don't have to constantly create more passwords and like more passwords, potentially higher risk of, one of them leaking or something, or just, it makes it so much cleaner,
Sure.
Just like connect, just like do it for me.
Well, and a couple things also that if I understand correctly, I can't connect to like a production connection string and modify my schema. Like I'm pretty sure that was what I tried first and I got permissions errors.
If you have turned on that as your production branch, like we call it promoting to production.
Okay. Oh, so I was just doing everything wrong. I definitely like did not read the docs. I just started trying to write code.
I will say, I mean, you shouldn't really necessarily need to read the docs. I will say the onboarding steps are pretty good. And from there, I would hope most people who are somewhat familiar with databases could run with it. But I know we actually put...
And that was my mistake. Not somewhat familiar with databases.
Well, I mean, I used to run into a few. I think that error that you got, if you pasted that into the docs, we literally have a page to tell you what's going on right there, because we know that is a thing that happens. And we explain like, hey, we did this for your own good.
Okay, so let's get our database set up so that we can actually start loading and reading some data here.
Yeah.
So do I just run like Prisma migrate?
Migrate Prisma npx Prisma migrate dev, I think is the actual command. I could.
Yep. So it's pulling in from .env. It's loading the schema from Prisma, data source database. It's using learn with JSON. It's got our main branch at 3309.
And it's going to probably ask for a name. Yep.
So we'll call it init because why not?
Yeah, that's what I usually do.
And so it created a migrations thing. So we can kind of, if we want to look, we can go see what happened. And it just created the table for us. Hey, look at that.
The raw SQL that you did not just have to write.
Yes, because while I could have Googled how to do this,
Me too.
I probably would have screwed it up. So this is a little bit nicer for me because this looks like, I've written GraphQL. I've defined what a REST API looks like. I've written TypeScript types. This doesn't feel too far from that, right?
Yeah. And I think one other just really cool thing about the schema file is, to me, it's very portable. It's like, it's really leaning into this idea. I call it databases as code, just like how configuration as code has been really popular over the years in the infrastructure space, or infrastructure as code. I can literally take this and just go like create another database with it. Mm-hmm. Like it's nothing about that file is specific to the database that we have here.
It's
other
very
environment variables.
And you know what I like about that is that, we're moving into this world where a lot of times what people want is a quick starting point. And so being able to put this right into your starter template and say, yeah, so You've already got this. So if you have a database available and you update your environment variables, just run this command, will bootstrap your whole database. And I assume there's even a way that I could put like seed data in as well. And
Yeah,
say, like,
you
here's
can
your
write
first 15 entries so you can see how this whole thing works together.
Yeah, Prisma has a way to write like seed scripts, basically.
Cool. Very
that
cool.
you can. Well, one thing, let's go back to the Planetscale web app, and we can actually see the schema inside our main branch too.
Ooh, neat.
So that we show that Prisma migrate actually. Well, we might have to. You'll have to go if you scroll up, all the way to top, and go to branches.
Branches.
And then click on that main, and then the schema.
Here's
at
schema.
the top. You might have to click the refresh button because sometimes it has to pull down. There we go.
Cool. Also, I see you making fun of me, Dom. Don't think I missed that. I'm coming for you later.
SQL Pro is actually the name of a GUI of a SQL GUI.
SQL Pro seems like the thing that they try to get you to pay an extra $40 for, and all it actually is like a little badge on the thing that it's the exact same product, but it's got like the gold badge.
Yeah, it's SQL Pro has had a fork off of it called SQL Ace that is much better because SQL
cool.
Pro, I don't know if it's still being maintained, and I also doesn't know if it. I don't think it supports SSL connections, which is
that
the
seems
thing
like
that
a
is
bad
actually
time.
required for Planetscale. So Planetscale will not make a connection without SSL. We will only make secure database connections. We like table stakes for us on security. But actually that schema just reminded me something we should go do while we're like in here. It had that migrations table.
Yes.
I know you talked about it some at Prisma Serverless Conf, like why do we have this kind of, it really only matters, if we're like, have a, we're making a lot of migrations and changes for our little hacky thing. It's not going to break anything if we hadn't turned that on, but so then that way the Prisma Migration Center tracked on your main branch. And so that we can see what migrations have happened over time. So if anything needs to be done with.
Oh, so this gives you visual, like you can kind of see things through time and space here.
We aren't rendering it super like in a pretty way. I mean, if you look at the schema for that migrations table, that's automatically created by Prisma. If you go back to branches and then main and then schema.
This is automatically created by Prisma.
Yeah.
And so
Prisma,
what'll happen
Prisma's
over
doing
time
that.
is we'll get these kind of correlated a little bit. And I want to come back here when we actually make changes because this is something I thought was extremely cool where you show a comparison of one change set.
Yeah, later we can make a change.
Yeah.
We can add a column or something, and we can do that totally.
Yeah. But okay,
but the Prisma migrations thing. I just wanted to say the Prisma migrations thing, it's something a lot of ORMs do, like being able to track migrations. And so that's why we have it where you select Prisma. I think it'd be really cool in the future if we could like auto detect some of that. But now you just go tell us which one you're using, or if you have a custom table name or whatever, like Laravel will have its own, and then like I think TypeORM or like whatever you're using. Yeah, cool. So our schema is now on our main branch.
It's in there.
Yep.
All right. So from that, we should, theoretically speaking, be able to connect and write to our database. So is there like a fast way for us to try that out and make sure it works?
Yeah. I mean, do we want to initialize like a next project and then just like add a page to do an API route to do that?
So we've got roughly 15 minutes left in the episode.
Yeah.
So what we might want to do is let's seed some data in. Let's write to the database.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can stand up a next API route to read it out. And that might be all we have time for.
Yeah. So the Prisma Studio, we can add the data. NPX Prisma Studio, I think we'll do it. Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
So we see
there's
model.
our song.
Yeah. And we can add a record.
Okay. And so the first one, chat, I'm going to put about 5 songs in. So drop in your favorite songs. I'm going to open up Spotify and look for some good ones. Let's see what's in here. What have I liked lately? This is going to be a good Here's a great one. I don't know if you've seen the video for this song yet, but it is stellar. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, so smoking out the window. Probably should have included artists in here, but hey, we don't have time for that anymore.
I feel like we got trolled by Nickelback.
Dom. Why didn't that work?
Uh,
Oh no. Okay. Oh wait, no, it did work. It just timed out. Okay.
Sometimes there's a little, if you don't hit enter after you do the URL, sometimes it like doesn't save the URL.
I am going to so if for everybody who is not aware, Dom works at Netlify.
Like I like how it's not even the first one.
This is going on his permanent record. This will be reflected in your next review. Okay, what else you got? What else you got, chat? Hit us with songs. We need at least a couple more. Taylor, what's your current favorite song? Not to put you on blast like that.
Man, that's quick. Man, I don't even know. This is weird. I've been listening to a lot of TV on the radio. It's like my hype up music when I'm like trying to get
TV on the radio. That's fun.
When I'm trying to get shit done. But the funny thing is, like, I don't actually know any of the song names. I just like put it on auto and it just goes, just whatever the first one is when you go on Spotify.
So let's get TV on the radio, and let's Wolf Like Me.
Wolf Like Me, yeah, that works.
All right, so we're gonna get this one.
I think that's a good amount after that.
Yeah, I think that's about all we have time for.
Yeah.
A Wolf Like Me. All right.
Yeah, and save that.
So
cool.
we've got data.
Yep. And so we want to pull out that data, create a route and pull out that data. I think that fairly quick.
All right. So if I want to
create Next app, want to use that to get a sample or something, or if you have a preference.
So is it npm init create next app? Or what is the right? Let's see.
I did it just like 3 weeks ago. Last time I ran that command. Now I'm
getting started. They have npx create next app
at latest. Yeah, that works.
And there we go. This was, what did we call it?
Song API or something. I don't know.
I'm just gonna copy this.
Yeah, copy that.
Works. Oh, is this gonna do? Shit.
It's gonna put it inside of it, probably.
Is this gonna break because it doesn't want to? Oh no. Okay. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. We are going to just create an app folder, and that's gonna be fine.
And yeah. So Next.js does the file-based routing, so then we can just go into the pages that it creates this API and just create a
Okay, so we've got access to songs here, and we want to get, so like our to-do here is connect to the DB, and then in here we want to load songs, right? So
we can literally do so connect to the DB. I usually, but we'll skip that, but just I usually create like a lib Prisma.js so that I have like one client that I'm like pulling from every time instead of creating new clients for every single request.
Gotcha. I mean, I can do that. That's fast. Let's go lib Prisma.js because we use JavaScript, and then do I need to install the Prisma client?
When you installed the CLI, I can't remember if they're separate or not.
I think we need this one.
Yeah, I think so for the client.
Okay, and then how do we get the Prisma client to know about our schema?
How do we get the Prisma client to it? Just when we ran Prisma Migrate, it created a client, and
we don't need to run like don't they have like a generate command or something?
Generate command ran. I think it ran when you ran Prisma client.
Oh, dope. I didn't
Not
realize
Prisma
that.
Migrate. It would have been in the thing, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look back real quick.
Let's see.
A little bit higher. Wait.
Where
Wait.
were
Stop.
we?
Yeah.
It was
You just passed. You
here.
passed it.
So next step, set the database URL. We did that.
Oh
Set
no,
the
not there. When you run Prisma Migrate, so a little bit further down. Because when you run Prisma Migrate, it is creating a client based on your schema. And
Oh, I understand. So it did the thing for us. It ran generate. I understand. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Generated Prisma client. There we go.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it did create it. Yeah.
Got it. Hopefully I didn't break it when I ran this. Okay. So then we can get our client.
I pasted into DMs if you want to make it a little bit faster, what the code that I use for client.
I'm on 2 computers here, so I'm going to have to make it fast, but that's fine. So we'll go, the Prisma is going to be either global.prisma or it'll be a new Prisma client.
Correct.
Okay. And then if process.env.nodeenv is development, we will set global.prisma to Prisma. All right.
And then export that.
Okay. Okay, so we've got that. And then in here, in songs, we can import Prisma from, go up one more to libprisma. Do I need the JS? I'm going to leave it in. And then in here, if I remember correctly, this is just going to autocomplete, right? So we can like Prisma.song.
Find many.
And if I just call it, that's everything, right? Like we can just do it like this and that'll give us all of our songs.
Yep. Yeah, I usually throw it into a try catch, but I mean
today we're gonna YOLO.
We're living on the edge.
Yes, so I'm gonna just pass this in as songs, and I think we can try it. So I'm gonna Netlify. Oh wait, hold on. Oh no, I'm on a new version of.
Oh no.
Netlify CLI at latest. This should take just a second here. And then what this will let us do is run like a local serverless proxy and pull our environment variables if we needed to, but this will auto load the .env and all that stuff. So that, let's see, I'm gonna run here. What do you mean it's not? We literally just installed it. I guess we'll just do this for now. There it goes. I don't know why it did that. So we don't have one of these, but we should have one of these. And nothing is working because no app server detected. Do we not have a... Oh, because we're not in the app folder.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, try that again. So there it goes, and this should work. It doesn't like...
I think it changed...
Pages API schema.prisma. Ah, crap.
Let me look.
We did something. I think I need to move all this to the top level.
Oh,
because I think it's trying to find... Shoot. What if I... Okay, so what if I just move this one out? Nope. Come on, come back. How do I get you to come back? There we go. I'm going to move this one out. And then I'm going to go, yes. So theoretically speaking, this should already be fixed. So I'm going to look at pages, API, song, and it goes up. Yes, that's fine. Let's do this. Try it again.
Oh, this is different.
No such... Still doesn't... Okay, let's try that one more time now that it is... Still doesn't find our schema.
Something... Let me think. Maybe.
Oh, no, look at this import is weird.
Oh, yeah. Let me see.
I must have auto completed that or something. Okay, so there
Cool.
are songs.
Yeah.
Hey! And so we're now pulling our songs from
Planetscale.
from Planetscale using a Next API route. And I want to see if in 5 minutes we can deploy this dang thing. Let's try it. So I'm going to. Do we still not have? Okay, it's here. So let's Netlify login, and this will take. I'm already logged in. Great. So let's Netlify init. I'm going to create and configure a new site. We'll put it on my team. We're going to call this one here. Okay. And it's going to be, did we not push to this repo?
Is it because?
Should be okay here. Let's git add everything and make sure we didn't just double commit anything. And this should all be good. I think what we're gonna get into trouble with here is we've got this like double package JSON. I think I need to refactor this, so maybe we're not gonna be able to deploy it. Because what I need to do, or maybe we can, I don't know, let's see. If I take these dependencies out and I move them over into this package JSON, and then I take these dev dependencies and I move them into this package JSON, and then I can
Delete the other one.
Delete this. I can move and delete this, right? And then, oh, you know what I needed though was the command to actually.
I was about to say, yeah. Does it have the next related?
So we can just run. What is it? It's just next build, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Next,
yeah,
I
did.
npm install. So Eco, I could have used a base URL, but here's the problem, because it would have moved into the app and then not done any of the Prisma stuff, and we need that Prisma client to exist and all those things. So so let's npm run build, just make sure that does what we want. Couldn't find a pages directory because we need to set the. Okay, I'm just dragging all of this to the top. Like we're just gonna let this be. We're gonna move all of this up to the top. I don't need that part. So let's move this to the top level. We're gonna move it all. Git ignore. Probably don't need to worry about that too much because they should be pretty similar. Okay, so let's git add. Oh wait, no, we do need to echo .env into our git ignore, and then that should be gone. So let's also echo .netlify into the git ignore, and I think that should be everything. So let's git add everything and just check it to make sure I didn't accidentally commit anything I shouldn't. Migrations are supposed to go in, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I am going to go fix that API route import because we just changed the location. So that should be just one less layer up, I believe. Right? One, two, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.